to Alexander.
My hands
who
were
shall
trembling
receive
so
the
badly
entirety
I
of
had
the
to press
estate.
them flat against the polished
What?
mahogany table just to keep them from betraying me. The lawyer's voice cracked open the silence like thin ice. And to the various charities listed in Schedule C, including the Children's Hope Foundation, the Homeless Veterans Alliance, and the Women's Refuge Network, the entirety of my estate, valued at approximately $28 million. I watched their faces. My older brother Marcus froze mid-breath, mouth slightly open as if someone had just slapped the air out of him. Lydia, my sister, always so composed, always the one who knew exactly what to say, let out this small, strangled sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob that never quite decided which it wanted to be. Daniel, the youngest, the one who used to follow me around like a shadow when we were kids, just stared at the will in front of him, as though the letters might rearrange themselves into something kinder if he glared hard enough. The room smelled of expensive leather, fresh printer ink, and the faint coppery temps of panic. Nobody spoke for what felt like forever. Then Marcus finally managed words, hoarse and cracked. This is a joke, right? He wouldn't. The lawyer cleared his throat, very softly, very professionally. There is also a personal letter, addressed to all of you, to be read after the disbursement clause. He slid the cream envelope across the table. My name wasn't on it. Of course it wasn't. I was already gone. My name is Benjamin Cole Harlan. I'm 43, or I was 43. By the time you hear this story, the way I'm telling it now, inside my own head, replaying every second like a film I can't pause, I've already been dead for 3 weeks. I used to run Harlan Family Enterprises, the company grandfather built from a single hardware store in 1958. The company I spent 21 years of my life breathing life into while the rest of them, well, they had other plans. I can still see the exact moment the envelope touches the wood, the soft tap, the way Lydia's manicured nails hesitated above it like she was afraid it might bite. I wish I could tell you I felt nothing watching them from wherever I am now, but the truth is heavier than that. There's a strange, hollow satisfaction, and beneath it, something that still aches. I never wanted it to end this way. Not really, but they made sure it did. Let me take you back. Let me show you how a family drowns its own. It started quietly, the way most poisonings do. I was 38 when the first real fracture appeared. Not loud, not violent, just a shift. A conversation in the boardroom after hours. Marcus leaning back in my chair with his feet on my desk, telling me the company needed fresh energy. You've done amazing things, Ben, truly, but maybe it's time to step into an advisory role. Let the next generation take the wheel. The next generation, he was 41, 2 years older than me. But he said it like I was already collecting Social Security. I laughed it off. Of course I did. What else do you do when your own blood looks at you like an obstacle instead of an older brother? Lydia was worse. She never said it straight. She just started rewriting history whenever we were in the same room. Remember when Ben saved the company in 2012? Oh, that was mostly luck. The market turned, anyone could have ridden that wave. Remember when Ben negotiated the merger with Kessler? Well, Marcus was the one who softened them up first. Little edits, over months, years, until the story everyone told at family dinners no longer included me as the architect. I became the lucky passenger. And Daniel, God, Daniel, hurt the most. Because he didn't rewrite anything. He just stopped looking at me, stopped asking my advice, stopped texting me dumb memes at 2 a.m. One day, I realized our conversations had become transactions. Ben, can you sign off on this? Ben, the lawyers need your approval. No more "Hey, you won't believe what happened today." I told myself it was fine. Families evolve. People grow apart. I poured everything into the company instead. Longer hours, bigger risks, bolder moves. The numbers kept climbing. Profits doubled, then tripled. We opened offices in Singapore, Dubai, London. I was proud. I thought, maybe if I made it undeniable, they'd have to see me again. See the brother who stayed up nights so they could sleep easy. See the one who never once took a salary increase while they all bought vacation homes and new cars. I was wrong. The real fracture came on a rainy Thursday in late October, 3 years ago. We were in the conference room on the 42nd floor. Glass walls, city lights smearing through the downpour. Marcus walked in with a folder, thick. New, he didn't sit. He just dropped it in front of me like he was delivering a verdict. "We've been talking," he said. All three of them, standing shoulder to shoulder, united, for once. "Talking about what?" I asked, even though the cold already knew. Marcus didn't blink. About restructuring ownership, about fairness. Grandfather left the company to all four of us equally. But you've been running it like it's yours, alone. I stared at the folder. At the new shareholder agreement they wanted me to sign. It would dilute my stake from 33% to just under 9%. They would become majority holders overnight. Lydia spoke then, soft, almost gentle. "You'll still have a seat on the board, Ben, and a very generous consulting package. You won't want for anything." Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the rain. I asked the only question that mattered. "Why?" Marcus answered without hesitation. "Because we're tired of watching you play God with our inheritance." Inheritance, that word. It landed like a slap. They weren't talking about the company we'd all inherited the right to build. They were talking about what they expected to take when I was gone. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just looked at each of them, one by one. Marcus, impatient, entitled, always measuring his worth by what he could take. Lydia, beautiful, brilliant, and so very cold when she decided someone no longer served her story. Daniel, the little brother I taught how to ride a bike, who now couldn't even look at me while he helped erase me. I signed nothing. I walked out. They didn't speak to me for 6 months after that, not directly. They worked through lawyers, board resolutions, proxy votes, slowly, patiently, like surgeons removing a tumor. By the time they finally forced me out completely, I owned less than 4%. They threw me a farewell party, catered champagne, everyone smiling like we were all still family. Marcus raised a toast to Ben, "For everything you've done. We couldn't have gotten here without you." I smiled back, raised my glass, and said the only thing I could say without breaking. "You're welcome." That night I went home alone, sat in the dark, and for the first time in my life, I started thinking about what I would leave behind when the time came. Not to them, not anymore. That was the night the idea was born. Quiet, cold, and perfectly legal. I'm going to stop here for a moment, because what comes next, what I did next, it changed everything. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I didn't even drink that much. After the farewell party, after I smiled through every backslapping hug and every will still see each other, right, I drove home in silence. The city lights kept smearing across the windshield like wet watercolor. I remember thinking how strange it was that the world looked exactly the same, when inside me something had finally cracked clean through. I parked in the garage. left the engine running for almost a minute before I turned it off. The sudden quiet was louder than anything Marcus had said that night. Upstairs, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the leather chair by the window, the one I bought after closing the Singapore deal, the one I used to sit in at 4 in the morning answering emails while the rest of the city slept. I opened my laptop, not to work, not anymore. I opened the folder I'd never shown anyone, the one labeled simply Estate. Inside were drafts, old ones, from when I still believed family meant something unbreakable. The original will left everything equally to Marcus, Lydia, and Daniel. The company shares, the properties, the investment accounts, the art collection grandfather started, even the cabin up in the Adirondacks, where we used to spend every 4th of July until we got too busy pretending we were still close. I stared at that document for a long time, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Then I opened a new file, and I started writing. Not in anger, not at first. In something colder, something clearer. I wrote the new will in one sitting. 3 hours, maybe 4. Somewhere between midnight and the sky turning the color of old bruises. Every asset, every share, every dollar, every painting, every piece of land, gone, not to them. To a list of charities I had quietly supported for years, ones they had laughed about whenever I mentioned them. The Children's Hope Foundation, the one Lydia once called a tax write-off with sad music. The Homeless Veterans Alliance. Marcus joked that they should just get jobs at a Christmas dinner 2 years earlier. The Women's Refuge Network. Daniel, in a rare moment of cruelty, had said it was just a hotel for women who can't keep a man. I remembered every word, every casual, cutting remark. They thought I was laughing along. I was memorizing. I added more, a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, because none of us ever had to worry about tuition. A small animal rescue outside the city, because Lydia once kicked a stray dog away from her heels and called it filthy. A literacy program for adults, because Marcus had once bragged that reading books was for people who couldn't afford real entertainment. I didn't do it to be petty. I did it because I wanted the irony to be perfect. I wanted them to open the envelope and see, in black and white, the exact things they had mocked. Now the only things left with my name on them. The lawyer was an old friend, Richard Voss, 71 years old, quiet, discreet, the kind of man who had seen every flavor of family betrayal in his 40 years of practice. When I brought him the new will, he didn't ask questions. He just read it, slowly, then looked up at me over the top of his glasses. "You're sure?" he asked. I nodded once. He sighed, not in judgment, just recognition. I've seen this before, not exactly this, but close. The wound has to match the weapon. I signed every page. He witnessed 2 copies, one in his safe, one in mine. I didn't tell a soul, not even my assistant, not even the woman I'd been seeing quietly for 8 months. She was kind, gentle, and I never wanted to stain her with what I was becoming. I kept living, or something that looked like living. I went to the office every day for another 6 months. They let me keep a desk. A courtesy, I answered emails, signed what they asked me to sign, attended meetings where people talked over me like I was already a ghost. And every night I went home and stared at that second copy of the will. I never once felt guilty. I felt clean, like I had finally stopped apologizing for existing. They started spending the money they hadn't inherited yet. Marcus bought a yacht, called it Legacy, posted pictures on social media with captions like, "Living the dream our grandfather always wanted for us." Lydia renovated the lake house, the one grandfather left specifically to me in a codicil nobody knew about until after he died. She tore out the original pine paneling, installed marble, took before and after shots for her interior design side project. Daniel leased a penthouse downtown, threw parties, told everyone he was finally stepping into his own. They assumed I was broken, that I'd fade away, that I'd spend the rest of my life in quiet resentment while they enjoyed what was theirs. They were almost right, almost. Then came the diagnosis. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer, inoperable, aggressive. The doctor said, months, maybe. He said it the way doctors do when they've said it too many times, gentle, practiced, final. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I just nodded, thanked him, walked out into the parking garage, sat in my car, and for the first time in years, I smiled, not because I wanted to die. I didn't. I loved the smell of rain on asphalt. I loved the way coffee tasted at 6 in the morning. I loved old jazz records and the sound of a fireplace. But the timing was poetic. I had maybe 6 months, enough time to tie every loose end, enough time to make sure nothing could be contested. I met with Richard again. We updated the will one final time, added the personal letter, the one they would read after everything was gone. I wrote it by hand, on cream stationery, the same stationery grandfather used. I didn't yell in that letter. I didn't curse. I simply told them the truth about how I had loved them, how I had built everything with them in mind, how I had stayed late, taken risks, foregone vacations, so they could have the life they wanted, and how, in the end, they had looked at that love and seen only an obstacle. I told them I hoped the charities would do more good with the money than they ever could have. I told them I forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because carrying hate into the ground seemed like a waste of what little breath I had left. I sealed the envelope, left it with Richard, and then I lived, really lived. I traveled, quietly, alone, saw the northern lights in Iceland, walked the old streets of Kyoto in cherry blossom season, sat on a beach in Portugal and watched the sun melt into the ocean. I didn't post pictures. I didn't tell anyone where I was. I just existed until the pain got too loud, until the nights got too long. I came home, hospice, my own bed, my own view of the city I'd helped shape. On the last night I could still hold a pen. I added one final sentence to the letter. If you ever wonder whether I hated you, the answer is no. I just finally stopped letting you define what my life was worth. Then I closed my eyes and waited. They buried me on a Tuesday. Small service, very few people. I made sure of that. I didn't want speeches. I didn't want tears they hadn't earned. I just wanted the reading of the will and the letter. I wish I could have seen their faces one more time, but I don't need to. I already know exactly what they looked like. I'm going to pause here, because what happened next, when they opened that envelope, when the room went silent, when the truth finally landed, that's the part that still echoes the loudest. They gathered in Richard's office 3 weeks after the funeral. A grey Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky looks like it's holding its breath. The receptionist led them into the conference room without small talk. No coffee offered. No polite chit-chat about traffic or the weather. Just the soft click of the door closing behind them. Marcus arrived first. Navy suit, crisp white shirt, tie a little too tight, like he was armoring himself. He sat at the head of the table, out of habit, then realized it wasn't his table anymore and moved one seat over. Lydia came in next. Black dress, not mourning, black elegant charcoal, sunglasses still on, even though the blinds were half drawn. She didn't take them off until she was seated. Daniel was last. He looked smaller somehow. Hoodie under a blazer, hair uncombed, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept properly since the day I stopped breathing. Richard entered, carrying only two things, the thick legal binder and the cream envelope. He didn't sit. He remained standing at the far end of the table, hands clasped in front of him, the way priests sometimes stand when they know the sermon is going to hurt. "Before we begin," he said quietly, "I want to make one thing very clear. This document has been reviewed by 3 separate estate attorneys besides myself. It is airtight. There is no ambiguity. There is no contestable clause. There is no legal mechanism by which any of you can challenge the disposition of Benjamin's estate." Marcus leaned forward. His voice came out rough. "We're not here to contest anything. We need to understand." Richard gave the smallest nod. Then he opened the binder. He read the disbursement clause slowly, every word measured, every pause deliberate. "The entirety of my liquid assets, real property, securities, business interests, personal effects, and residual estate shall be distributed as follows: to the Children's Hope Foundation, 40%, to the Homeless Veterans Alliance, 25%, to the Women's Refuge Network, 15%, to the Harlan First Generation Scholarship Fund, 10%, to the Second Chance Animal Sanctuary, 5%, to the Adult Literacy Initiative of Greater New York, 5%. He listed the exact figures: $28,417,263 and change. The room didn't explode. It imploded. Marcus's chair scraped back an inch. Lydia's hand rose to her throat, fingers trembling. Daniel just stared at the table, lips moving silently like he was trying to do the math in his head and failing. Richard continued, "All prior wills and codicils are revoked. All previous expressions of intent are superseded. There are no personal bequests to family members, business associates, or employees beyond those already satisfied during my lifetime." He closed the binder. Then he picked up the envelope. "And now," he said, "Mr. Harlan requested that I read this to you, aloud, in your presence, after the terms of the will have been disclosed." He broke the seal. The soft tear of paper sounded obscene in the silence. "I wish I could tell you I imagined their faces differently, but memory is cruelly accurate," Richard began. "My dearest Marcus, Lydia, and Daniel, if you are hearing these words, then I am gone, and you have just learned what I chose to do with everything I spent my life building. I want you to know that I did not write this letter in anger. I wrote it in clarity. For 21 years, I carried the weight of Harlan Family Enterprises, not because I was the oldest, not because I was the smartest, but because I was the one who showed up. Every day, every crisis, every late night, every weekend, I showed up when no one else wanted to. I did it for grandfather's memory. I did it for the people who worked for us. And yes, I did it for you. I wanted you to have freedom, security, options. I wanted you to never have to worry the way so many people do. Somewhere along the way, you began to see that devotion as entitlement. My work became your inheritance before I was even cold. You spoke of our company, but only when discussing what you would take. You spoke of fairness, but only when fairness meant more for you. I heard every joke, every casual dismissal, every time my name was quietly erased from the story you told yourselves and others. The yacht, Marcus, You named it Legacy. I hope she sails beautifully. I hope every time you stand on her deck you remember that the money that paid for her came from knights. I spent alone in an office so you could sleep without debt. The lake house, Lydia. You tore out the pine grandfather nailed with his own hands. You replaced it with marble that will never remember summer bonfires or the smell of pine needles after rain. I hope it looks beautiful in the photos. The parties, Daniel. The penthouse, the nights you told people you were finally stepping into your own. I hope the view was worth it. I gave you the only thing I had left to give, a mirror. Everything I built is now in the hands of the very causes you once mocked. The children you said were someone else's problem. The veterans you said should just get jobs. The women you implied were weak. The animals you turned away from. The adults you thought were too old to learn. They will use it better than you ever would have. I do not hate you. I loved you enough to let you become exactly who you chose to be. If there is any part of you that still remembers the boy who taught you how to skip stones, the brother who covered for you when you crashed Dad's car, the man who never once asked for thanks, then perhaps, someday, you will understand that this was not punishment, it was consequence. And consequences, unlike apologies, do not require your permission to exist. With whatever love remains, Benjamin Richard folded the letter, placed it carefully back in the envelope. No one spoke for a very long time. Marcus's shoulders began to shake first, not sobs. Something quieter, something broken. Lydia removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry, but her mouth kept opening and closing, searching for words that wouldn't come. Daniel stood up suddenly. Chair tipping, he walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the glass, and stayed there. Richard waited. Eventually Marcus spoke, voice so low it almost disappeared. Can we at least keep the name, the Harlan name, on the company? Richard shook his head once. The company was sold last month, to a private equity group. All proceeds went into the estate. The name was not part of the sale agreement. Marcus laughed then, a short, ugly sound. Of course it wasn't. Lydia whispered something, so soft Richard had to lean forward. What did you say? She repeated it, louder this time. Broken, he forgave us. Daniel turned from the window, tears finally moving down his face. He forgave us, he echoed, and we still lost everything. Richard gathered his papers. There is nothing more to discuss. The transfers are already in process. Funds will be dispersed within the next 14 business days. If you have any questions of a logistical nature, my assistant will handle them. He walked to the door, then paused. One last thing Benjamin asked me to tell you. They looked up. He said, don't mourn what you never truly valued. Mourn the man who did. The door closed behind him with the softest click. And that was it, the reckoning. Not loud, not violent, just final. I don't know if they ever spoke of it again. I don't know if they told anyone the real story. I don't know if the guilt ever softened into something bearable. But I do know this. Every time one of those charities sends out a thank you letter, every time a child gets a scholarship, every time a woman finds safety, every time a veteran gets a warm meal and a bed, every time an animal is saved from the street, they will see my name, not on a building, not on a yacht, not on a renovated lake house, but in the lives changed. And that, finally, is the only legacy I ever really wanted. I'm going to stop here. There's one last piece, the quiet part, the part that happens after the dust settles, the part where I look back and ask myself what it really cost. If you want to hear the aftermath, the final reflection from the other side. Type continue. Otherwise, this story ends where most real ones do. Not with triumph, not with regret, but with silence and truth. I'm not sure how long it's been since the last breath left my body. Time doesn't move the same way here. It's less a line and more a lake, sometimes still, sometimes rippling when a memory touches the surface. But I can still feel things, not pain. The pain is gone. What remains is weight. Not heavy exactly, just present. Like carrying a stone in your pocket you've grown used to but never quite forget. I watch them sometimes, not constantly, not obsessively, just when the quiet gets too quiet, when the echo of that letter still hangs in the air somewhere. Marcus sold the yacht 18 months after the reading. He didn't get what he paid for it. The market had softened. Or maybe buyers could smell desperation on the listing photos. He moved back into the city, a smaller place, 2 bedrooms, no view worth mentioning. I heard somewhere, from someone's quiet conversation, that he started drinking more seriously. Not the expensive single malts anymore, the kind that comes in plastic bottles and doesn't pretend to be sophisticated. He doesn't talk about me. Not in public. Not even to his new girlfriend who's 15 years younger and calls him M, like it's a personality trait. Lydia kept the lake house for almost 2 years. She tried to sell it twice. Both times the offers came in low. People could sense something off about the place, maybe. The way the light falls wrong in certain rooms now. The way the silence feels personal. Eventually she rented it out. Short-term, Airbnb couples on weekend getaways. Families pretending they're making memories. She never goes there herself anymore. Last I checked, she was living in a sleek condo downtown. Minimalist, white everything, no photographs, no warmth. She posts about self-care journeys and reclaiming her narrative. The captions are polished. The eyes in the selfies are tired in a way filters can't hide. Daniel is the one who surprises me most. He didn't run, didn't reinvent, didn't pretend nothing happened. He moved into a small apartment above a bookstore in Brooklyn. 1 bedroom, books everywhere. He started volunteering, first at the animal sanctuary, one of the ones I left money to. Then at the literacy program. He teaches night classes now, adults learning to read, people who never had the chances we did. He doesn't talk about the money, doesn't talk about the will, doesn't talk about me much. But every once in a while, when he's walking home late, he'll stop under a streetlight, look up at nothing in particular, and just stand there for a long time, like he's listening for a voice he knows won't answer. I don't know if he's sorry. I don't know if sorry is even the right word anymore. I just know he's trying to live in a way that doesn't require anyone else's permission. And that, somehow, feels closer to an apology than anything he could ever say out loud. The charities are doing what charities do when you give them real money instead of pocket change. New buildings, more beds, more scholarships, more animals finding homes, more adults learning how to fill out job applications without shame. My name appears in annual reports, quiet, small font. Benjamin Cole Harlan, benefactor. Nobody Googles it expecting drama. Nobody finds the story, and that's exactly how I wanted it. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel empty either. What I feel is finished. I spent so many years trying to be seen by them, trying to prove I was enough, trying to earn a place at a table they were already planning to push me away from. In the end, I didn't need them to see me. I just needed to see myself clearly, one last time. And when I did, I liked the man, looking back. He was tired. He was hurt. He had made mistakes, maybe too many. But he had also loved fiercely, worked honestly, built something real. And when they tried to take that away, he chose to give it somewhere it could never be poisoned again. That's the part I carry now. Not anger, not even forgiveness, really, just peace. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. If there's an afterlife, I don't think it's golden gates or fire. I think it's this, the slow realization that the only judgment that ever truly mattered was the one you gave yourself when nobody else was watching. I gave mine, and I can live with it forever, if that's how long this takes. So I suppose this is the end. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet. The way most real endings are. I loved you once, more than you ever knew. I hope, somewhere, you find a way to love yourselves half as much. And if you don't, well, that's your consequence now, not mine. I'm done carrying it.